They said I had 10 days to comply, or face a lawsuit. Little did they know, I wasn't about to be intimidated. It all started with a stack of official-looking envelopes in my mailbox. Each one had that cold, intimidating logo of my HOA, the homeowners association I trusted to manage our neighborhood. At first, I thought it was just another reminder about community rules, maybe a fine for an expired permit. But as I tore open the first letter, my heart sank. The letter accused me of multiple violations, from landscaping issues to supposed structural changes on my property. And if I didn't resolve these issues within 10 days, the HOA threatened to file a lawsuit. 10 days. That's barely enough time to even understand what's going on, let alone fix it. I sat on my porch, staring at the papers, feeling a mix of anger, fear, and disbelief. I had always followed the rules, paid my fees on time, and maintained my home perfectly. Yet here I was, facing legal threats for reasons that didn't make sense. Most people would panic at this stage, call a lawyer, maybe even pay up just to get it over with. But I knew something was off. Something was very off. I started digging. I read through every page of the HOA rules, past meeting notes, and emails I had received over the years. At first, it was overwhelming. The official documents were dense, full of legal jargon, and often contradictory. Some rules seemed straightforward, like maintaining a certain lawn height or keeping exterior paint within approved colors. Others were vague, leaving room for interpretation, which clearly was being exploited. I even went online to research state laws regarding homeowners associations, trying to understand exactly what authority they truly had and where they could overstep. That's when I realized something shocking. Most of the violations they accused me of were completely fabricated. Some rules they claimed I had broken didn't even exist in the official documents. There were allegations about structural changes, landscaping violations, and unauthorized modifications that, according to every record I could find, I had never done. It was as if they were throwing darts blindly, hoping one would stick. Feeling a mix of disbelief and growing determination, I decided to quietly reach out to a few neighbors who had been around longer than I had. I approached them cautiously, not wanting to alarm anyone or draw unnecessary attention. To my surprise, almost all of them had similar stories. They confessed that they too had received threatening letters or notices, some even more aggressive than mine. A few had paid fines simply because they didn't know any better or were too intimidated to challenge the HOA. Listening to their experiences, I felt a mix of anger and vindication. This wasn't about rules anymore. It was about intimidation, about a system preying on homeowners, and maybe even exploiting them for financial gain. The more I listened, the clearer it became that this was a pattern, not an isolated incident. I realized I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was standing up against a much larger culture of fear that had been quietly operating in our community for years. Determined not to be another victim, I began documenting everything meticulously. I took photos of my yard from multiple angles, capturing the exact state of my landscaping, fences, and outdoor structures. I noted the dates of every maintenance task, from tree trimming to repainting, along with receipts for materials and services. I dug out emails, letters, and past HOA communications, compiling a clear timeline of my interactions. Every document that proved I was in full compliance was saved, organized, and labeled. I knew that if I wanted to fight them successfully, I had to be methodical and precise, leaving no room for their false claims to stick. By the time I finished, I had created a detailed, undeniable record of my property's compliance, and with it, a growing sense of confidence. For the first time since those initial letters arrived, I realized I had the tools to turn the situation around, not just for me, but potentially for other homeowners who had been silently suffering the same intimidation. Then came the moment of truth. I decided it was time to call a lawyer, not because I was panicking or hoping to settle quietly, but because I needed a solid strategy. I wanted to understand my rights fully and figure out how to turn this situation around without giving the HOA any leverage. During our conversation, my lawyer explained something crucial. While HOAs have the authority to enforce community rules, they do not have unlimited power. They cannot fabricate violations, intimidate homeowners without cause, or threaten lawsuits without evidence. Essentially, their legal muscle had limits, and I was about to find exactly where those limits lay. Suddenly, what seemed like an unstoppable legal threat began to look much more manageable. With this knowledge, I felt a surge of confidence. I realized that I wasn't at the mercy of their intimidation tactics. I had the law and my meticulous documentation on my side. Over the next few hours, I carefully went through all the evidence I had collected. Photos, emails, letters, and maintenance records. Each piece reinforced my case, showing that I had done nothing wrong. Every violation listed in their notice could be directly contradicted with proof. By the time I finished, I had a clear, airtight picture of how to respond effectively. Then I drafted my response. Unlike most people, who might send a panicked or emotional reply, I wrote a letter that was calm, firm, and professional. I systematically addressed every allegation, pointing out the inconsistencies and false claims in their notice. I referenced specific state laws and HOA regulations they were ignoring, making it clear that I knew exactly where they were overstepping. I also included my evidence in a well-organized format, so there could be no doubt about my compliance. But I didn't stop there. I made it explicitly clear that if they continued their harassment or attempted to pursue a baseless lawsuit, I was fully prepared to countersue and seek damages. When I finally sent the letter, I could feel the power shift. It was like flipping a switch. Suddenly, the hunters became the hunted. The HOA, who had thought I would be an easy target, had to pause and reconsider their aggressive tactics. I had turned their intimidation into their weakness, not through threats, but through preparation, knowledge, and confidence. That moment was electrifying. For the first time, I realized that being informed and organized could level the playing field, even against an institution that seemed untouchable. I wasn't just defending my home anymore. I was setting a precedent that homeowners like me could stand their ground and push back effectively. Over the next few weeks, the situation escalated dramatically. The HOA didn't simply back down after receiving my detailed response. If anything, their letters became more aggressive, more threatening, and even borderline intimidating. I received notices accusing me of additional violations I had never committed, deadlines that seemed impossible, and subtle hints that they might take even stronger legal action. For many people, this would have been overwhelming. The stress of receiving letter after letter, each stamped with urgent or final notice, could easily make anyone feel powerless. But I stayed calm. I reminded myself that panic was exactly what they were counting on. Every time a new letter arrived, I carefully analyzed it. I documented the claims, cross-checked them against the HOA rules, and matched them with my own records and photographs. For every false accusation, I had proof ready to refute it. I created a system where nothing could slip through the cracks. Dates, emails, receipts, and photographs were meticulously organized. When I met with my lawyer, we reviewed each letter together and drafted precise responses that left no room for misinterpretation. It wasn't just about responding. It was about demonstrating that their threats held no weight against a prepared and informed homeowner. Then came the call that shifted everything. One afternoon, my phone rang, and it was the HOA board president. From the moment he started speaking, I could tell something was different. His usual authoritative, almost condescending tone was gone. Instead, there was nervousness, even hesitation. He stumbled over his words, pausing more than usual, trying to phrase sentences carefully. "Maybe we need to reconsider this," he said, his voice betraying uncertainty. It was clear that my detailed letter, combined with my thorough documentation, had been reviewed by their attorney, and they realized that continuing down this path could expose them to liability. At that moment, I felt an incredible sense of empowerment. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was controlling the narrative. The very people who had thought they could intimidate and pressure me were now second-guessing themselves. Their confidence had evaporated, replaced by caution and hesitation. I had taken a situation designed to instill fear and turned it completely around. They had underestimated me from the start, assuming I would be intimidated or unaware of my rights. Now it was painfully obvious that I was neither. For the first time, the dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the victim. I was in control, and every move I made from this point forward would be deliberate, strategic, and firmly in my favor. The tables had turned completely, and I could finally see the light at the end of what had been an incredibly stressful legal battle. Finally, after weeks of relentless back and forth, the HOA caved. The emails, letters, and threats that had filled my mailbox with anxiety and dread were suddenly replaced with silence. The kind of silence that signaled a complete shift in power. Not only did they retract all the false violations, but they also went a step further. They issued a formal apology acknowledging the harassment. Reading that apology, I felt a wave of relief, but also a deep sense of vindication. All those sleepless nights, hours spent gathering documents, and tense conversations with my lawyer had paid off. It wasn't just a legal victory. It was proof that preparation, persistence, and courage can overpower even the most intimidating institutions. The impact of my victory went beyond just me. Some of my neighbors, who had quietly suffered under the same threats, but were too scared to challenge them, reached out to me afterward. Many admitted they had considered paying fines, simply to avoid conflict or legal trouble. But seeing me stand up and win gave them hope. They realized they weren't powerless, that the HOA's tactics were not absolute, and that knowledge and careful preparation could level the playing field. It was inspiring to know that my actions had not only protected my own property and rights, but had also empowered others to stand up for themselves. And there was another unexpected benefit. Because the HOA's threats were completely baseless, they were required to cover a portion of my legal fees. This wasn't just a financial win, it was a symbolic one. It sent a clear message that institutions cannot bully or harass homeowners with impunity. For the first time, I felt like I had reclaimed control over my own space and life, and that sense of empowerment was incredible. Walking away from this experience, I understood something far more important than just winning a legal battle. It was about standing up for yourself when rules are being misused to intimidate or manipulate you. Knowledge, preparation, and confidence aren't just tools, they're armor. They allow you to face challenges that seem overwhelming and come out stronger on the other side. If there's one lesson I want viewers to take away, it's this. Don't panic when facing authority. Document everything meticulously. Know your rights, even if the legal language seems complicated. And never underestimate the power of self-belief. Many systems, whether it's an HOA or another institution, rely on fear and compliance. But when you arm yourself with facts, evidence, and courage, you shift the balance. Sometimes, the system isn't on your side, until you make it pay attention, until you show that you are not afraid to fight back. And that is a lesson worth carrying with you long after the battle is over.